I feel really good about just sitting beside Rick Live, and I'm not sure who this guy is. This guy won a whole bunch of Stanley Cups. So look at
just snuck in here.
He snuck in. Look at this. There's a Stanley Cup ring. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah.
Well, I gotta get the light though.
Get the light. How's this one? Okay, look at this. Here's the Stanley Cup ring for a player, and here's the Stanley Cup ring for a referee. This doesn't seem to be any justice, does there?
I think that's pretty fair.
Looks pretty good. Brian Trottier got leveled. But you see, he stayed with it, and he got leveled after the fact too. And he doesn't mind at all. No. Baby, did he get hit there by Craig Muni. Gets a great pass. Now watch him coming in. Look at the shot. Watch the puck. Right there. There's the puck in the net. And then the defenseman rolling in there and crosses the red line. Watch the puck. Right there. Puck coming. Cross the red line. Bingo. No question. That's a goal.
Here's the collision here. Muni comes in. Ooh, much like...
Fans, as part of our season-long farewell Rexall celebration. Once an Oiler, always an Oiler. Tonight, we'd like to welcome an Oilers defensive specialist known for his open ice hits, penalty kills, and monumental shot blocking abilities. He played 7 seasons in Edmonton, winning 3 Stanley Cups with the Oilers in '87, '88, and 1990. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise and welcome back to Rexall Place, number 28, Craig Muni.
An event where I asked him, I said, because he won a few Super Bowl, he won a Super Bowl ring. What was it like to walk in, and did he ever have the guts to walk into a Buffalo Bills alumni event with that ring on? And he allowed us how only once did he ever recall doing that at a Jim Kelly roast, just because. Curious, Craig Muni, you have 3 of these. None of your Sabre alums, I think, have any.
Fred Stanfield does. He has, I believe, he might have 2. For sure, one with the Bruins.
And do you wear them and you kind of say, hi guys, how you doing?
I try not to brag about it, but I do. To me, the Stanley Cup, winning the Stanley Cup is very much, when you see the celebration, it's a community trophy. And it's something that you share not only amongst your teammates in the organization, you share it with your family, your friends, and the city you live in. So for me, it kind of continues with the ring. I no longer play. It's been a long time since I've played professional, but just to wear the rings when you do a certain function, and people who never get a chance to see them, little kids who don't know who you are, and I'll take the ring off and I'll put it on their finger to have them take a picture of the ring with being little kids. They have no idea who I am, what that ring is, but one time when they grow up, they will. So for me, it's the same thing. It's just about sharing the winning and the success that I was fortunate enough to have.
I just forewarn you that Randy Anderson, who you had lunch with, if you hand that ring to him, you might not see it back. So you grew up in Ontario?
Correct, Toronto.
And who was your role model? I mean, the Maple Leafs are gods in Ontario.
Yeah, they pretty much were. You grew up in Toronto. Hockey Night in Canada was on back then every Wednesday, every Saturday, so needless to say, my parents had a lot of pull to get what they want out of me. Just had to pull Hockey Night in Canada off or tell me I can't watch it, and I would do whatever I could to watch it. So I grew up obviously a Leaf fan. Boreas Salming, Dave Keon, George Armstrong, Jock Plant, Daryl Sittler. Oddly enough, I was fortunate enough I was drafted by the Maple Leafs, and my very first training camp, we're doing a scrimmage, and it seemed like there was hardly anybody on the bench, so we're all tired, and Daryl Sittler's beside me, and he just sat down. He said, "Kid, I know you're probably a little nervous." He said, "The best advice I can give you is just go out there and do what you do normally. Don't try and do something you don't normally do, there was a reason why you were drafted high, and everything worked out. And I was like an 18-year-old kid sitting right beside one of the idols I grew up watching, and it was the best advice I ever got for it was first training camp.
So when Davey Keon scores that goal, did you go ballistic?
Whenever the Leafs scored a goal, I went ballistic. There was a lot of lean years being a Leaf fan, and you think the Sabre fans have had it tough. Tried being a Leaf fan all those years. I think it was, 1964 was the last Stanley Cup, or right around that era. I think I might have been 2. So it's been a long time coming for the Leafs fans as well.
So you're drafted by your dream team. You're the #1 draft pick by the Maple Leafs. What was it like in the home? Did they call you? Did you like today's college drafts, football drafts? It's a big event. Was it a big event then?
It's a big event, but it was always held at the Montreal Forum back then. So it was back in 1980. I was debating whether I was going to go to the draft or not. So my agent at the time convinced me I should go. There's only 21 teams at the time, and Philadelphia Flyers had the last pick of the first round, so they had the 21st pick. So he assured me I was going to go in the first round, that I should be there to go down, wear the sweater, do the interviews, the whole thing. So we decided we'll go. So finally they get to the 21st pick. Philadelphia gets up to the podium and do their little spiel, thank the city, thank the NHL. And first things they say comes out of their mouth is, Philadelphia Flyers are proud to select from the Kingston Canadians, my junior team, defenseman, my position. I'm halfway out of my seat thinking this is it, Mike Stothers. I'm looking around, my folks, who did they say? So I sat down, and immediately I'm thinking, okay, how long do I have to sit here? Where am I going to go? How long is this going to take? And then 4 picks later, I went to the Maple Leafs with the 25th pick, and I didn't even hear my name called. My folks are nudging me, get down there, you're just drafted by the Leafs. So, oddly enough.
Was there a role model or two? Because were you a defenseman all the way through your career?
I was, yeah.
Was there a role model? Was it George Armstrong? Was it Armstrong? Was it a defenseman?
No, he was a forward. I loved watching Boreas Salmi when he first came over. I guess he was different for what the game was back then, but he was just so, I guess, Bob Orr was kind of a little bit before me, where Boreas Salmi, I guess, was kind of that next version, but being from Sweden, he was a great skater, great passer, smooth. It was almost like he had the puck on a string. It was just beautiful to watch how he played and how long he played, and even when you see him today, he looks like he still could play.
You were at the Maple Leafs for 3-4 years, sort of bounced around with before you got up to the bigs. Didn't play a lot of games, did you, with the Maple Leafs?
No, I was drafted in 80, played 2 more years of junior. The year I was supposed to have a chance to make it, when I was 19 years old, it was the year, I don't know if you remember, Bob McGill, Fred Boimstruck, Jim Benning. Those 3 guys were 18, 19 years old, and it was the year we were supposed to all have a chance to make it. They're going to go with a youth movement, basically. So I went to training camp in Windsor, which was my junior A team, and I blew my knee out and never made leave camp. So after that, I pretty much toiled in the minors, which was St. Catharines at the time, in the American Hockey League for 4 years. I think I played 19 games over the 4 years with the Leafs, and then finally got an opportunity to get out of there.
Well, how did that opportunity occur? Did you were ready to be a free agent? You showcased in the Edmonton story.
Pretty much that was it. That last year, the Leafs offered me basically what you call a termination contract, which I don't think exists anymore. So basically, at the end of that contract, they're saying, we don't want you anymore, you're a free agent, you can go anywhere, we don't want compensation for you. So the last season I was with the Leafs, I was called up a month left in the season. I was having a pretty good year in the American League. And Claire Alexander was the assistant coach, so after practice he calls me into his room and said, the Leafs are happy with you, they want to offer you another contract. So I told Claire, I said, well, there's only a month left in the season, I want to play out the rest of the year. We've talked to about 8-10 teams who are showing interest, but I'll include the Leafs in my consideration for next year. So next day I come back, practice, they sent me back to the minors. So pretty much that was writing on the wall that I was probably not going to get an opportunity in Toronto. So that summer, we basically were talking to those A-10 teams, and the one thing I asked each of the general managers was an opportunity to show I could play. So I wanted a guarantee I would play half the exhibition games. In basically the 6 years I was with the Leafs, 4 pro and 2 in junior, I think I may have played 2 or 3 exhibition games in total. So Glenn Sather was the only one of the 8 teams, and we were talking to the Sabres at the time, who said, "You have my word and my handshake, but I can't give it to you in writing." And I ended up playing half the exhibition games and made the Oilers out of training camp.
So the Oilers were now becoming a well-known commodity. They had a guy, number 99. So you walk in the first time, and now you don't have to defend him. He's there on your team. What was your reaction?
It's hard to describe, I guess, how Wayne played. It was, you watch him and you can't duplicate it. It's hard to describe. The best way I describe it is I played with Mario Lemieux towards the end too, and Mario was already a star in the league. But Mario would try, and he was big and strong, he could skate. He would try and beat you one-on-one and dangle you and undress you as he goes around you. where Wayne wasn't like that. Wayne would come at you one-on-one, then he would try to get separation from you, and he would gain the blue line, he would do his curl, find open ice, and then wait for guys to come. So I was a defensive defenseman, and he was the only player that I would do this with. That you go, get up on the rush, you get to the slot, and if you don't get the puck, you basically curl back to your position at the blue line. So with Wayne, you put your stick on the ice, you go right to the net, you can't even see him through all the crowd. Next thing you know is you look down and the puck's on your stick. And you're shaking your head, how did he do that?
How did he do it?
I'm going to have to ask him that in 2 weeks, how the hell he did that. I still don't know.
Was there an off factor just on the team? I mean, I think of teammates and you say, yeah, he's pretty good. But was he that much better than some of the other? I mean, you had some Messier, you had some really major league Hall of Fame type guys.
Yeah, we were fortunate to have like you said, a Hall of Fame team almost at that time. Everybody was still in their young 20s and growing as an individual, growing as a team. When I went out there, they already won 2 Stanley Cups. They just lost the cup they lost in the playoffs to Calgary on the infamous Steve Smith banked it in off of Grant Fuhr's leg and into the net. So I came that following year. And I remember my first training camp out there, and I knew Paul Coffey from the Toronto area. So I'm at training camp again. I'm trying to make the team. So I'm hitting guys out there. I'm blocking shots. I'm playing a scrimmage like a game. And both Paul Coffey and Mike Krushelinski come up to me and they say, "Munes, what are you doing? You're going to hurt somebody out here, maybe even yourself." I said, "You don't get it though. If I don't do this, I'm not getting a chance to play an exhibition game." So they just kind of skated away and went about their business. But to me, the exhibition game was my season. It was my chance to show that I could play. And if Glenn was true to his word, I was going to get half of those games. But I had to prove that I was going to be worthy to get those games, not just by words.
How do they match up defensemen? I mean, you had Paul Coffey, you had a few others. How do they say, Craig Muni, we think you are the best chemist? The best chemistry is with so-and-so. What's the thinking?
Well, I think you look at your defense pairings and you take the strengths and weaknesses of what you have, even whether it was then or today or right now. I'm health coaching with the Buffalo View, so I do the same thing with the defense today. They end up putting basically Charlie Huddy and Paul Coffey together, who have played together for quite a while. Charlie was more the stay-at-home and Paul was more the Russian defenseman. They end up putting me basically with Kevin Lowe, who his previous partner was Lee Fogelin, who you might remember with the Sabres as well. So it ended up working out that I'm a left-hand shot. Glenn asked me if I could play the right side. I never played it in my life, but I absolutely said I can play the right side, just like I can the left. So I started playing exhibition games with Kevin Lowe on the right side, and we clicked pretty good. They end up trading Lee Fogelin to Buffalo pretty early in the season, I believe. Back in 1986 was when he came back to Buffalo. And Kevin and my job basically were to shut down the other team's top forwards. Our job was not to let them score, and basically kill penalties were the two main criteria we had.
Well, and you did that incredibly successfully, but was there as you reflect back during that time period, and when there was a power play by the opposition, and you knew that obviously the guns were coming out, was there one or two teams when they brought out their power line and said, "Oh shit"?
I think every team has that. Every back then too, there's a lot more goals being scored and a lot of goal scorers. So I always took it as a personal challenge that you're playing 4 guys against 5. So I took personal pride, as I believe the rest of the guys did, not to let them score. That was our job. Our job was to kill the penalty. If we got a shorthanded goal, then it was a bonus. And I think actually Hasek may have set a record at 1.4 shorthanded goals in the season. But it was, again, collectively, it was our job to do it. And personally, I took pride in doing that job.
I saw you, this is an interview, the YouTube that we didn't put on a Dave Schultz roast. Yeah. And Dave, of course, big guy and has quite a reputation, Broad Street Bullies. Were there, in the league at that time, were there a few of those type of guys that you just, as a defenseman, because you're a pretty big guy, and didn't shy away? We saw a couple of incidents there, that you really said, gee, I hope we don't engage tonight?
Well, when I first was drafted, again, it was 1980, and it was just towards the tail end, I guess, really, of the Broad Street Bullies and the Big Bad Bruins. So they played basically to that nickname, and everyone kidded that they were a lot tougher at home than they were on the road. And that's a big hockey saying as well. A player is tough at home, but they disappear on the road. So you don't really think about it. If it happens, it happens. But when you do talk to guys whose jobs that was, Dave Schultz, or you talk to Rob Ray or Andrew Peters around here, and I never really thought about it until I started hearing these guys tell stories about it, how they knew that was their job. They would look ahead on the schedule that they're going to play, we'll say Dave Schultz as an example, that it was marked on the calendar. The night before they knew it, they wouldn't sleep. The routine of a day of a game was you went down for a pregame skate, you had a meal at 1 o'clock. For me, I slept between 2 and 4, and then went down for the game. Those guys said they didn't sleep in the afternoon. They sweated the whole time lying down waiting for the game. Just the anticipation of knowing what they had to do. They did their job, and they were paid for it, but they protected the players. But it was just mentally a different thing that they went through to prepare for a game than the rest of us would have had to do. And it's not an envious job. And somebody's always coming in the league that wants to prove they're tougher, and they want your job. And it always happened.
On the Oilers during that halcyon days, was there an enforcer? Did you have somebody?
Yeah, we always had a few, from Dave Semenko, Marty McSorley, Kevin McClellan, Steve Smith, Jeff Bukaboom, Kelly Buchberger. So there was always at least 1 or 2 on every team. So they were basically there to make sure nothing happened to the star players.
Would anybody really, I don't even remember seeing anybody take a run at Gretzky. Was he protected?
Yes, actually I heard they were talking about that on the radio show coming down today. They were talking about the Philadelphia Flyer who just got suspended, Gudis, for 6 games for running a player, and they're talking about what would have happened in the old days and how the game's changed in that regard. So they were talking how Wayne had protection, which he did have, but people always forget that as good as Wayne is as a setting up goals and scoring goals, the one thing he had a knack for was he knew where everybody was on the ice, and that's the one thing you can't explain about him. He knew if the other team had too many men on the ice before you did, or before the referees did, and he was yelled to the referees. He would never get hit because he never put himself in a position to get hit. If he was up against a wall, he would feel a guy coming from this shoulder, so he would spin off the other way. So he was very elusive. He wasn't like really a fast skater, but he was quick and he was elusive to hit. So the only hit I can remember, and that was, I think, an exhibition game, a fellow by the name Bill McCreary, who hit him in an exhibition game out in Edmonton and hit him pretty hard. And again, Dave Semenko came out after him, and I think that might have been the last time he ever saw the ice in the NHL. Yeah.
Grant Fuhr, he was your goalie during that time period, and ultimately ended up with the Sabres. But what made him kind of nerves of steel?
Goalies, first of all, are very different, if you know any of them. Or if you happen to be one of them, I apologize. But Grant was he's just very low-key. He never took any credit for anything. If you wanted to pat him on the back or tell him that he made the save of the game or he won the game single-handedly, he always just shrugged his shoulders, just do my job. He just wanted to go play golf and play hockey, and he never acted, never thought of pressure. It was just so refreshing because you see different people on how they respond to pressure, and some goalies you can't even talk to. If they know they're starting, you just stay away. They have to go through their routine. I played with one goalie through the Leaf organization. His name was Bruce Dowie. If he knew he was playing, pretty much the whole time before the game and the warm-up, he was in the bathroom throwing up. So everyone was different, but Grant was just as relaxed as it came, no pressure, didn't feel it, didn't portray it onto anybody else, and just loved the competition.
Messier, he's a big guy, isn't he? What?
He's a little shorter than I am, but he's tough as nails, yeah.
Was it on the team, again, we're focusing on Edmonton, once an Oiler, always an Oiler. Is that true?
Pretty much, yeah. Well, I played 16 years of pro. 7 of those years were in Edmonton, so as long as I played. So the one clip you just saw was the closing of the arena, basically. So what they did was they brought back one alumni for every home game, and it was basically their night. So that clip was for a video for the night I was out there. And then the last game of the year, I don't know if you happened to see the closing of the arena ceremony, where they had 160 former players and current players all there. So it was as good as the event was that Pagulas did when they first purchased the team. But when they introduced everybody here, they introduced us basically as an era. So a group of guys came out together. For that one there, they had even more players, and they introduced everybody one at a time. And everybody who was at the game, and it was a full house because even up in the catwalk all the way around, you could see people. They sat there for the game and the ceremony, which was, I think, an hour and a half, 2 hours after the game, right to the end. So hockey out there was pretty much everything. And it's a culture in Canada versus the States. You have professional baseball, football, basketball, where up in Canada, hockey is the main professional sport.
So that was just past year, right?
That was this past year, yeah.
It was called the Rexall Arena, right?
It was the Rexall then. It was the Northlands Coliseum when we played there. So now they're just moved into a new arena. I'm not sure what the name of it even is, but it's supposed to be a state-of-the-art, best arena in the NHL. I think they said next to Vegas right now.
So when you're there with all 160 alums, did they all look like nobody had aged?
Actually, this is really Canadian blonde hair. And I played it this way, as you can tell in that picture.
I can just imagine. It must have been such a thrill to just have an opportunity to get together with guys that you hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah, I ended up playing for 7 teams total, so that team was probably the closest group of guys I've ever played with, which is one of the reasons why they had the success. The next closest team I played with, that I would say, would be the Dallas Stars, which was my last year. So I retired in 1998, the year before they beat the Sabres in the finals for the Cup. And
Did they really beat them? No goal?
No, that should have. Well, they would have had to still win Game 6 and Game 7 in Dallas, but that was not a goal based on the rules.
Yeah.
But that Dallas team was as close as a group of players that I saw since the Edmonton team. And when you put 20, 25 guys together with different backgrounds, different job roles. It's important, so when you hear professional teams talk about chemistry or in the dressing room what the players are like, whether they're good in the dressing room or bad, it does hold a lot of water.
So you win your first Stanley Cup. Talk about the game where, in fact, it happens. I mean, there's this pent up. Can we, in this case, you're going to try to sustain the lead? I mean, talk a little bit about the moment, because we don't never experienced here in Buffalo. So just give us a teaser here.
Well, I'll go back actually a little bit. The Smythe, what division were we? Smythe division, I think, back then. So we're playing actually Winnipeg in the second round, and I got hurt. I got hit from behind into the boards. I had a bruised kidney. So I missed all the next round, which was against the Red Wings. And then I missed the first 2 games against the Flyers in the finals. So I came back for game 3 and the rest of the series. So we're up 3-1, and then the next game we're up by a score of 3-1, and we end up losing that game. And the next game we're up 3-1, and we lose that game. So now we're game 7. I'm thinking maybe I'm the bad luck charm, that maybe I should volunteer to sit out. So game 7 now is in Edmonton, and this was 1987. So Ron Haxtell was a rookie who was the last winner of the Conn Smythe Award by the losing team. He ended up winning the Conn Smythe that year. So we're up only 2-1 in this game in game 7, and there's 5 minutes left or so to play in the game. Glenn Anderson picks up a puck. He crosses their blue line, takes a slap shot that happens to go in. So now we're up 3-1 with 5 minutes left in the game. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, here we go again. I'm jumping up and down. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. I lose my voice. I can't even speak. And I'm looking around. No one else on the bench is, and they're all calm, cool, collective, just going about their business. And I'm thinking, that's why they've already won 2 Stanley Cups, and I haven't won anything yet. But you could see it, you could taste it, you could feel it, like you're so close. And just seeing those other games, how the 3-1 lead disappeared, that it could easily be taken away from you. So after we won that game in the Stanley Cup, it was almost like you change your mindset. It's like I started thinking more that we're here. You work so hard to get here. You're not going to let anyone take it away from you. That this is your cup to win, not for someone else's, and you're not going to let them do it. That's why I have a tough time understanding how the Buffalo Bills, as great as they were to get the 4 Super Bowls and not win 1. It's an accomplishment to get there 4 times, but even by blind luck, you would think they would win 1 of them.
Thanks, Greg.
How do you feel after that explanation? Bills fan, go Bills. Yeah.
This is their year, though.
So, but I read someplace that during that ceremony, when Gretzky did something that you kind of picture, yeah.
Yeah, that was that was his last Stanley Cup with the Oilers. So that was the '88 Cup, and all of a sudden he's organizing all the guys on center ice with the cup and take a team picture, and then they called in all the coaches and all the trainers. Then they called in the training staff and all the extra players. So the picture kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But that was really the first picture that we now know that is something standard, is that picture at center ice. That was Wayne started that in 1988, and that was the first time it was ever done.
So where were you when you got the word that number 99, Wayne Gretzky, the biggest name in hockey, was traded?
I was actually at a gym working out, and someone came up to me and said the Oilers were having a press conference, and Wayne was being traded. And I said, yeah, right, okay. It's Wayne Gretzky. No one trades Wayne Gretzky. And I said, no, really, they're having a press conference about. So everything stopped. We watched the press conference, and just in shock. It was like, you knew then that nobody was untouchable, that everyone's for sale, everyone's for trade, that it is a sport and it is a business. So it was a little bit of a reality world in the sports, for the sports world. And the sports world is very different than, and I'm in the business world now, but the sports world is very different from everything else in life too.
Then you find, so that, shortly thereafter, and then you leave the Oilers and go to the Blackhawks for a couple years.
Cup of coffee.
Yep, and then you end up with the Buffalo Sabres. And at the time, the Sabres, the head coach was Muckler, right? John Muckler?
Yep, correct.
So talk about Muckler.
To me, Buckler, I had him in Edmonton. He was an assistant coach. And then when Glenn Saylor, he was the head coach, GM. And then the 1990 year, Saylor stepped down from coaching, was full-time GM, and so John Muckler was the head coach. And we were just talking about this earlier while we were eating, that back then there was not a lot of film use until playoff time. And then come playoffs, there was film on the other team you're playing, your opposition. And Muckler broke down the film, so he was the first coach I really encountered that did that. And to see his understanding of the game and how he broke it down and basically show us what the other team was going to do, and already have a game plan in his mind of what we're going to do to prevent them from doing what they want to do. So I had a real good relationship with John, which I guess he must have liked how I played since he wanted to bring me to Buffalo. So I've got nothing but the best to say about John and have high respect for him, and still see him from time to time around Buffalo.
During that first year, you had a playoff game against the Devils, 4 overtimes. Talk about what it's like to play 7 periods.
Tiring. I actually had an experience before that with the Oilers in Boston in the Stanley Cup Finals. That went, it might have been around the same time, but the one with the Sabres one was different and special because it was, again, it was a different group of guys. The one thing I've always learned with sports, and I've passed on to the kids I coach now or my own children, especially regarding sports, is you get to a certain point if you're about to win or have an opportunity to win a championship, and that is the one and only time in life that that particular group will be together. The next year, some guys will be gone, retired, traded, new guys will come in. So for that moment in time, that is the one group you'll have a chance to write history. So I've kept that in the back of my mind, and I preach that to the kids I coach now to make it something special for them to think about before they enter that game. So the game in Buffalo was one of those too. It was one of those moments in time. It was part of the Sabre history that we'll never know if it ever happens again. So we basically, that game, I think it was partway through the third period, we went down to 4 defensemen, which typically you play with 6. They would throw Ken Sutton in there, who was a younger defenseman at the time, trying to make his mark. So he would fill in every once in a while as a 5th defenseman. And then by the time each overtime happens, the game goes longer, you get tired and tired, and you get to the point where you mentally think, you don't make a mistake, play defensive hockey, don't let them have a chance. If you have a chance to score, you take that opportunity. Other than that, you try to just maintain energy. So we're in the dressing room before the last period, and Randy Moeller all of a sudden decided he was hungry. So he asked the trainers to order some pizza and bring pizza in. So I see it come in, I smell it come in, my stomach is turning, I think I'm going to throw up. I had to leave the room, I couldn't eat, and we end up, Dave Hannon ended up scoring, what was it, the 7th period?
Yeah.
The 7th period. So I felt fine throughout the game other than just total exhaustion, but I couldn't drive home. My hands cramped up, my fingers, I couldn't even hold the steering wheel just from all the fluid I lost. And that was the worst part, is just the dehydration and trying to get hydrated again for the next game. So the dehydration can be bad. And I remember going back to the Leafs, my first training camp, you used to have to weigh in when you first got there, then weigh out at the end of your session. So back then we used to have 2 a day. You'd have 2 sessions basically before you're done for the day. So I would weigh in at, back then it was probably like 198, 200 pounds. At the end of the session I was weighing out about 175, 179 pounds. So that's how much water I lost. So I used to sweat brutal. I had 3 sweaters for every playoff game, one for each period. I had 3 pairs of gloves, one for every period. And after I was done with the period, I'd give them to the trainers to dry them in case I needed them for overtime.
So that during that game, Hasek had 70 saves. And he won. Was it 1-0?
Was it 1-0 or 2-1? I can't remember now.
70 saves. You know, I'm looking at a list of some of your fellow players, but what flashes in my mind every time I see the name Mogilny or LaFontaine is Rick Jeanneret. Give me your best Rick Jeanneret story.
Well, you don't see them a lot around or on the road, but he was one of the best at calling the game. He always had the LaFontaine and the Mayday. So he probably, of all the play-by-play people, he's probably the most, I guess, catchphrases, I guess you would call him. So he's just, sometimes you never knew if the home team scored or the visiting team scored. He just gets excited for both, which was different because there's a lot of homers who do this type of job. So you could always tell who was winning or who was scoring. So Rick was always just full of energy and enjoyed doing what he did.
Mogilny was the first Russian to immigrate, and we just had Jerry Meehan here last time, and Jerry talked about the story of how that happened and the intrigue and all of that stuff. Was any of that left over when you were playing with Mogilny? Was there any of this sort of Russian mentality at all?
No, but I'm trying to put this nicely.
Oh, go ahead. It's among friends.
Alex was a great guy, and I still have seen him today. But the Russian players had a stigma back then that, and it wasn't just the Russian players, it was all European players, that it was really a North American game. The Russians would play hard during the regular season, then they would disappear for the playoffs. That it meant more to them on a national level to go back home and play in the World Championships, which is basically simultaneously as the Stanley Cup playoffs. But it meant more to them or their country or their family that they win the World Championship. So it was always a tug and war at that time frame to get the European players to understand the importance of the Stanley Cup playoffs and what it meant to everybody and to win it. And so Alex was no different. I remember actually in the playoffs that Dave Hannon had to call Alex out in the dressing room for lack of playing and call him out in front of everybody that he has to give more. And to Alex's credit, I don't know if he really got it or understood during his time frame in Buffalo, but when he went to New Jersey, who again was a strong team, had some influential players, and had a winning tradition, when I saw him go to New Jersey and win a Stanley Cup and watch how he played and how he played differently, I knew he now understood and got what everybody was trying to tell him to do.
Dominik Hasek.
Best goalie I've ever played with.
And when you're playing defense, and obviously guys are shooting, and there were moments in time you just said, how did that happen? How did he make that save?
No, I could go for a glass of water or any time give them a breakaway and knew they weren't going to score. I played with a lot of great goalies. Grant Fuhr, obviously, Javi Boulin, Bill Ranford, Ed Belfour. To me, Dominik was the best. He treated every practice like it was a game. He took offense to you if you scored on him in warm-up or in practice, which was good for us too because it kept you sharp and made you shoot like you wanted to score instead of just throwing it at the net for him to stop it. So he was, again, a goalie, so he was different, but he was as competitive as it comes. He would stretch in the dressing room before the game, and I've never seen this in my life either, where he would be sitting on his butt, his legs would be spread eagle, and he would put his chest right down on the ground. And I'm looking at him thinking, that hurts. It hurts me watching him do it. How does he do it? Which explains really how he played or his style, because his style at that time was not conventional, and probably why he never really got an opportunity until later in his career, that he was so different. It's like, how do you even coach him? How do you change what he does to what everyone's thought process was on how a goalie should play. So after Dom had the career he did, it was like now goalies right after him, and goalies coaches and with the kids were teaching their students things that Dom did. So he kind of rewrote how a goaltender played, and he was different, but he was as best as it comes.
LaFontaine. Your best story on LaFontaine. Now he was the captain that time, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. Actually, that Jersey series, he was out with, I think it was something wrong with his knee. He had a bad knee. So we were going to New Jersey for Game 7, and Muckler all of a sudden tells the whole team that LaFontaine's coming back to play Game 7. We're all looking at him like, yeah, there's no way. Can't you see how he can't even walk? So we go up to New Jersey for Game 7. They leak it out to the press that he's going to play Game 7. He takes warm up for Game 7, but then he got undressed for Game 7. But it was just one of those mental ploys trying to get an advantage over the team. But Patty, I sat beside him in the dressing room. Probably one of the nicest guys, if not the nicest guy you'll ever meet in the game of hockey. He's politically correct. He would give you the shirt off his back. Always said hi to you, your family, your kids, knew everybody by name, and just salt of the earth.
Ted Nolan, he was your coach your last year at the Sabres. And a sort of ignominious end the next year. Did you get a sense that what happened there as far as Ted?
Yeah, I was only there for basically half a year because that was towards the end of the trade deadline was when I got traded. But I guess a couple things. The first meeting Ted had with the team, I'm sitting beside Bob Sweeney at our practice arena, and Ted was walking around just addressing the team. He had his notes in his hand. So I tapped Bob and said, do one of these. I said, look at his notepad. So the letterhead was Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, where he came from, junior team. So afterwards I said to Bob, I said, at least he could have put Buffalo Sabre letterhead with his notes on it. So that was kind of really the start of getting to know Ted. He was a great coach. He was a player's coach. He ran great practices, but you could see kind of a separation between the young players and the older players on, I guess, how things were going on and happening. So I think that might have been part of the reason why there was the controversy with Hasek and some of the older players. So it ended up sort of dividing the team, which kind of divided the management, because they say, and I don't know all the real reasons, that John Muckler was fired because of Ted Nolan, which was one of the reasons why it took him a long time to get a job in the NHL after he was fired from the Sabres. John Muckler was a well-respected hockey person for many years in the NHL. And the one thing with hockey is, in the management side of things, if there's a GM in place, and we see with the current GM, he's brought a lot of people in from the Ottawa organization that they don't trust anybody. They trust only the people they know who worked for them in the past. So that's why you see a lot of transition in management when new GMs are hired. So that was basically Teddy's demise for the longest time, was people wouldn't trust him, and what GM would hire a coach who just got a well-respected GM fired basically from a position that he held for a while. So it took Teddy a while to work his way back in. He had to go back to juniors and work his way up. He got the Latvia job, then ended up with the Islanders for a while. So, but Teddy, to me, was a great coach. He was a great individual. He was a player's coach, which as a player you want, instead of somebody that's ranting and raving in your face day in, day out. So, but that was just my view of what I saw there. And you'll ask a different guy and they might give you a different view of it.
Were you there in '95 when the odd ended, or had you been traded by then? When they closed the odd, Memorial.
I think it was the year I got traded, because the next year I believe was when the Crossroads, or whatever they called it back then, was going to open up. But again, like a John Muckler story, usually you get traded, and I'll give you 2 trade stories actually. When I was in Edmonton, coming up to the trade deadline, the last week we were on a long road trip. So there was rumors I was going to be traded. So I packed extra clothes in case I was traded while we were on the road, because I would have to go from city X to city Y right away. So I was prepared for the trade. So it never happened. Played our last game, we're on our flight home, and we are about to touch down, and one of the guys on the team is listening to a radio or something. Really, cell phones weren't what they are today. And he said, "I just heard you got traded." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, they just announced it." So lo and behold, plane lands, I walk out, my wife is there, my 3 kids, or actually 2 at the time, were there, and TV cameras. I go, "Oh, I guess he was right." So that's how I found out I was traded. So Buffalo, when I was with Buffalo, was the year that Ted was coaching. So Charlie, Huddy, and I were kind of in and out of the line. We would alternate, so we were kind of the older statesman on the team. So John Muckler called me probably 3 weeks before the deadline and says, "I have a trade offer to trade you. It's a team that's going to make the playoffs, but if you don't want to be traded and you want to finish out the year with the Sabres, I respect that, and you could stay." So I told John, I said, "I'm a hockey player and I play to win the Stanley Cup. So I want to play in the playoffs. I've never missed the playoffs in my career." So I said, given the circumstances with the Sabres, I said I would rather be traded. But for a GM to do that, well, that was the only time it would ever happen. So it's different and it's refreshing. So we took personal interest in your life and your family's life. So it doesn't happen a lot in hockey. Well, sorry, one more Buffalo story too that only happened once in my life. When I got traded to Buffalo, the Knox family owned the team at the time. So I get this letter in the mail, Buffalo letterhead. I open up and read it, and it's a letter handwritten and signed by Seymour Knox, welcoming me to the city of Buffalo and to the Buffalo Sabre organization. And that was the first and only letter I ever received in 16 years from ownership.
Really? So as you reflect back on your significant career, is there 1 or 2 highlights that kind of say, "Greg, these are the moments in time that I really remember, I'd love to talk about"?
Well, I think as a kid, you always dream of playing in the NHL and winning the Stanley Cup, scoring the Stanley Cup winner, Game 7. It's kind of like Casey at bat, bases loaded, bottom of the 9th, and you hit the home run with 2 outs. So I think, as corny as it sounds, you knew you made it in the NHL for me, was when you had a hockey card made of yourself with your picture and your name on it. And it was like kind of weird, but as a kid you grow up idolizing all the NHL players and you want to play in the NHL. I would practice signing my autograph as a kid all night long. And sorry, it still looks like crap.
By the way, before you leave, he signed a bunch of them, so stop by.
So once you see it, you can say, "Well, that looks like crap." So all that work for nothing. So that was kind of, for me, it was a moment where, because I toiled again 4 years in the minors, that it was something that solidified in your own mind that you finally made it. To have a chance to win the Stanley Cup, the first 4 years I was in Edmonton, I won 3 Stanley Cups. And it's like you can't start off any better than that. It's all downhill from there, basically, which I guess if you look at it that way, it kind of was. But, but what it did was, if you win the Stanley Cup or you win any championship, Super Bowl, World Series, it is a learning curve, and you have to learn how to win. And a lot of times you have to lose before you can win. And you have to realize what happened and why you lost, so it doesn't happen again. So good teams that are on the verge of winning will lose a year or 2 before they actually do win, as long as they have good coaching, good management, good personnel to go through that whole process. So what winning did for me, as it has done for a lot of professional athletes in any sport, is it helps prolong your career, because people want to know the success, the reasons, how, why, and everywhere I went, that was one of the things all the coaches and GMs would say, we want your input in the dressing room. We want you to talk to the players and the coaches of those experiences and what it took. So I remember one time when I was traded from Buffalo to Winnipeg. I don't know if you remember Keith Tkachuk for the Jets at the time. So he was a big, strong power forward, one of the premier power forwards in the league at the time. So, and I don't remember the incident. Something happened in the game, and I got pissed off at him enough to call him out in front of everybody in the dressing room. And the game went on. We finished the game. And then afterwards, Chris King was the captain, and he came up to me afterwards and said, that was the best thing you could have said to him because no one else could. And he wouldn't listen to anybody else because no one else has been there and won a Stanley Cup. So he said, coming from you, it meant a lot to him and it meant a lot to the team to hear it because it had to be said. So it just stuck with me, and as you get older, part of the process is to teach the younger players or a team or organization on how to win. And I basically carry that same forward with business now, working with the company I work with.
Which is, name it Uniland, right?
Uniland Development in Buffalo, New York.
Before we draw closure here and come up and get his autograph, funniest thing that happened on the ice that either to you, to somebody else, that moment in time where you said, holy cow, I can't believe what I just saw.
Didn't we just see it, that video? Does it get any worse scoring your own net in the playoffs? I remember as a kid when I was playing junior, and sometimes there's a mad scramble and you whack at the puck to get it out of the way and you put it in your own net. And I remember a coach telling me, son, don't worry, that may have been your first, but it won't be your last. And he was right.
So did the guys rib you when you walked off the ice on that particular thing?
No, they were okay with it. I'm sure everyone's had those same moments, but again, those things happen out in ice.
I mean, one last personal question, and it's an observation that we've all had because we've had several of your colleagues here, of Buffalo Sabres, and to a person, they're incredibly wonderful individuals. As a sport athlete, hockey players, I don't want to cast aspersions on football players and baseball players who we've had here also, but why do you think that is?
Personally, my own opinion is, I think it's just the major difference between all, I guess if you look at the four major sports, it's just the individuals of their backgrounds, their upbringing, the cities they're from, the family values. So I think that's probably the biggest difference. To me, hockey was a sport. It was a way of life. It was a job. I took the job seriously, but at the end of the day, it was still a sport. And I think hockey players all just look at it that way, that we were blessed to be and fortunate enough to play the game. And somebody has always helped me along the way, whether it was a coach, a mentor, a parent, whether it was my parent or someone else's parent. And it's all about sharing what you do and passing on what you know to help an individual now. And again, that's why we were talking about Stanley Cup ring and to me sharing that, or me coaching. I've coached all three of my kids from t-ball and baseball, softball, soccer, field hockey, basically you name it, I've coached them, other than gymnastics. I don't know anything about. But again, you guys have all been there. If you've had kids, you have to be there early. So it was no different. I didn't want to coach the kids. I wanted to enjoy retiring from sports and just watch my kids grow up. But when I dropped them off to these various sports and various coaches, I soon realized that they weren't learning anything. They weren't getting anything out of it. So it started off with kind of one team as an assistant coach. By the time they were going through high school and college, I was coaching all of them at travel sports. So I had 1 year off last year, and then decided I'll do one more year. I started coaching the Buffalo Buttes this winter. We just opened this weekend. So I guess it never ends.
What an incredible sharing guy. I just appreciated your comments here, and to share this opportunity to all the folks who came to this event today. Thank you. Thank you, Craig Muni. You're just a real role model. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
As you're departing from down here, he signed a bunch of pictures. Feel free to take one.